Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's Monadnock Broadband Group meeting, coming in a little early. Just wait a couple of minutes as people fill in today.
How's everybody doing?
Doing okay, can't complain. Got a thumbs up from Christine.
Expecting some folks here today, are you?
Yeah, thanks for your patience, everyone. I'm just going to wait another minute or two because I'm expecting maybe more like 20 people in today's meeting. So let's give it a minute for people to join us or come in from their last meeting. All right. Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I'll kick things off here. Hopefully a couple others will join us. If you're new to this meeting, I think I see one or two people maybe. Just state that the Monadnock Broadband Group is an informal coalition of municipal officials, practitioners, and other stakeholders with interest in understanding and coordinating relative to broadband issues in Southwest New Hampshire. And my name's Henry Underwood. I work for Southwest Region Planning Commission, and I provide administrative support to the Monadnock Broadband Group, or MBG. All right, so I have these every time. I think we're all veterans at this point, but please, take a minute to familiarize yourself or find your kind of feedback buttons and ways to communicate. The participants list, the chat feature, those are turned on, and you can use those to provide some nonverbal feedback, yes, no, thumb up, thumb down, etc., as well as write questions or respond via chat, throughout the meeting. I see there is one person joining by phone, it looks like. And just a reminder that if you're using a telephone to dial in, you can use *6 to mute or unmute yourself, and *9 to raise or lower your hand. Great. So the last meeting of the Monadnock Broadband Group was way back on January 31st. And we had two guest presenters, really two guest organizations with presentations. The bigger, more robust discussion was about programs coming forth through the bipartisan infrastructure law. Julia Puladindi led a discussion with the group following a presentation on the National Telecommunications and Information Administration's upcoming broadband programs. Excuse the typo. Also in the last meeting, folks from Cell Coverage Mapping talked about a online form and survey that's being used around the country to identify areas with gaps in cell coverage, both for broadband access, but also for voice calls. Cell coverage mapping is really available free to use for participants, and they also offer technical assistance to municipalities or others that want to work with them on a more one-on-one basis to dig into their data and connect with cell coverage providers on improvements. So if you missed either of those 2 sessions, you can visit swrbc.org/broadband to find those presentation materials and contact information, or simply reach out to myself. Great. So today's agenda, we're scheduled for up to 90 minutes if need be today. Today, we do not have a guest presenter. I'm suggesting we put more of an emphasis in what I've labeled a roundtable discussion. And the purpose of that being, there've been a lot of strides and progress in the last 3 years, massive, maybe you'd say. And we have this great mix of experiences throughout our region, between those who've completed projects, those that are just kind of wrapping up now, and then maybe a third category of not problem spots, but areas that have been more difficult to identify for improvements, even some communities that haven't really made this a priority yet. So we'd like to have this opportunity to kind of reintroduce ourselves to some extent and provide some quick report outs, and move on to some of the more typical agenda items. The Monadnock Region Digital Literacy Project is something that SWRPC is undertaking with others, and I'll make that part of the agenda pretty brief. All right. So we'll kind of just dive into more of the meat of today's agenda. As I said, many communities in our region and kind of around the periphery that have participated in these meetings have made a lot of big improvements relative to broadband, mostly with partnerships with Consolidated Communications. And it makes it a good time to provide some introductions, because they're new members at the table, as well as share some of our best thinking to challenges communities are experiencing, or ways to think about upcoming opportunities. And to get things started, I'll just offer this graphic. It's a little bit hard to make out, but give me a minute to explain here. This graphic is showing a map of the communities in Southwest New Hampshire that have supported public-private partnerships with different internet service providers through town meeting votes. And in green, of course, we have Chesterfield. Thank you, Brad, for joining us so consistently. The following year, the communities in blue, Walpole, Westmoreland, Harrisville, Dublin, Rindge, they were the kind of the second round of the broadband infrastructure bonds. And then in red, 2021, the biggest kind of cohort, and I'm clipping off a couple that are just north of our region. And of course, I've yet to add 2022 activity on here, but there's been a lot of progress and impact, but you can still make out, some of the holes, people who've attended these meetings and reported on what they're doing, that haven't found a solution yet. And some, to the extent, especially on the eastern part of our region, I think towns like Greenville, Antrim, Bennington, that generally consider themselves pretty well served. This hasn't been an approach they've taken yet. So that's kind of a quick report out. I hope to make this maybe more of a publicly online on our page for folks to be able to check in on. So for the discussion itself, we have I'm suggesting we spend like up to 45 minutes here, and that if everyone wants to participate, that gives us all about a couple minutes to introduce ourselves and provide a brief update, or separate from an update, I'm suggesting maybe a response to one of the questions here. I think that information would be particularly beneficial to communities just getting started. My suggestion is we kind of go in order, starting with communities attending today that have completed projects, and particularly interested to hear updates on the community's reaction, or perhaps it's advice that you would like a community that isn't as far along as you to consider over the next year or so, and etc. The second group, if your community has recently completed construction on a project, actually my own community, Troy would fall in there. I think there are a couple of suggestions there beyond a quick update. And then folks that are newer to the table, or you're particularly focused on the upcoming NTIA or state programming, mentioning where you're looking for support. So that's kind of the gist of this roundtable as I've outlined it. And I guess if I'd like to invite someone from a community that has completed a project to kind of dive in and introduce yourself and provide a quick update.
Henry, I don't mind doing that. This is Rebecca. Rebecca Landry, I'm the IT director for the city of Keene. And I happen to live in a community, the community of Dublin, where I am a resident and happy customer of what is now Fidium Fiber. And in the city of Keene, I'll start there. We were pretty well served relative to the other towns in the area already, but not completely served. And when you talk about lessons learned, I will say the incumbent providers are our friends, and we need to come up with partner solutions and engage them. Anything that involves not working with the incumbents is way too hard, way too difficult, way too intensive in terms of time and resources. And so I would say that to work with our incumbent providers is definitely the takeaway. From a resident perspective in the town of Dublin, I will say that my children are very happy. So in their ages 16 to 25. And so we are doing a lot more than we could ever have done before. There was actually, I have a coworker who looked at the house that I bought in 2016, didn't buy it because of the lack of broadband. I did buy it, and now I have better broadband than he does, so touche. But anyway, it has made a huge difference. And I know in the town of Dublin, we are able to talk about people staying year round instead of just coming for a season, and that's been a big plus.
Thanks for the update, Rebecca.
I'll jump in after that just to support what Rebecca is saying. This is Joanne from Jaffrey. Working with the incumbent made a lot of sense for us. Also, looking at what cable services are available was, clearly if you're going to bond, you need to be sure to include your cable company in the proposal or the request for information process. Don't be surprised if they're not particularly forthcoming with information. But what I would do, especially for smaller rural communities with maybe challenging hookups, is that we get information from the provider, who the contact person is for troubleshooting any difficult hookups, long driveways, class 6 roads, unpaved roads, so on and so forth. We had a good working relationship with Mike Cannon from CCI, and he came out and met with a number of customers, in particular Monadnock State Park, which was, during the pandemic, trying to process credit card transactions over a dial-up or DSL line, which was not particularly efficient. So now the park is looking at having broadband at its, which is important for public safety, but at the campground and at the main state park. And now they're looking at putting remote stations out on our Dublin Road access and on Shaker Farm Road at the toll road. At the toll road. So that would be my suggestion, is making sure you're sort of anticipating those difficult hookups. So that's what I would say. And we are, I think, 95% connected at this point. Even our most remote Class 6 road, I got a call last week from someone who had CCI coming out that day. So we're pretty much done, and it's looking good. So.
Hi,
Thanks,
this is
Joanne.
Brad Roscoe from Chesterfield. We've had fiber pretty much the entire town for just before COVID. It's been a big hit. I would definitely agree with everybody. Working with the incumbents is the right way to go. I've been trying to keep up to date on different things coming out through state and federal programs and stuff. And it looks to me that anything you do with the state and federals winds up costing more and taking longer than if working with the incumbents. So no, there's pluses and minuses to getting government money, but working with the incumbents is really the way to go. Overall, our people in town have been very happy. The reliability has been great. The only issue we really have is those people who are still using DSL from Consolidated and didn't want to go over to fiber. They complain a lot, and they don't. Some of them go over to fiber once they realize there is a difference between fiber and DSL. Unfortunately, most of the community does not realize that difference, and they wind up complaining about it until somebody really enlightens them that if they change their type of service, things will get better. So information flow to the community is very important, and follow through is very good.
Thanks, Brad, and for others that are reporting on past completed projects. If anyone is undertaking or thinking about undertaking their own outreach, about increasing subscribers, the take rate, people understanding the difference between fiber and DSL, please mention that. Is there someone else on board who'd like to report out on a completed project? So I'm thinking of anyone from Walpole or Ringe, Westmoreland, Harrisville is the last one. Okay. Well, we can come back, but I thought it'd be beneficial to kind of go through these stages more or less in order. So moving along to the kind of the second group of communities, projects underway or recently completed. Jaffrey was definitely, as Joanne was saying, mostly completed, but are there communities that have projects still, underway, under construction right now, or planned for construction later this year? Basically, if you call yourself as, being most of the way through expanding broadband, would love to hear what you're up to right now.
This is Christine in Temple. I can start. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Christine. Thank you.
Hi, sure. I've had some sporadic problems with my microphone, so hopefully everyone can hear me okay. We are in the middle of build out here in Temple. I think most of the fiber has been run on the lines. We had one area in town where there were some pole issues. TDS ignored us for a really long time until we started the build out, and then they decided they were going to sort of throw a wrench in that area of town. So that's slowed that particular area, but otherwise, you know, a few little hiccups here and there, but residents are starting to get their appointments to get connected. So we've had to do some re-education, I would say, with some of the residents who, I don't know if they forgot from June of last year how it was all going to work, but I would say things had been quiet for a little while, and then all of a sudden we're seeing a flurry of activity and questions. So it's all good. Communication with CCI and now Fidium has been great. But we've had to do additional re-education of residents. So I would say, even if things are quiet, to just keep putting information out to residents to remind them how it all works, because we are having to rehash some of that stuff. But yeah, we're excited. People are excited to get hooked up. So yeah, that's it for us.
Thanks, Christine. Someone else? I'll provide a quick update for my own community, Troy, since I've been somewhat involved with that broadband committee's work. Construction with public-private partnership with Consolidated completed really over the winter. And I believe the towns essentially signed off on the implementation activities. Something that's maybe unique, maybe not unique to Troy is that there's another incumbent provider that's also working to modernize, replace their copper infrastructure. So I think folks on the broadband committee have been challenged in communicating that difference to residents. That's been an extra task that maybe wasn't anticipated. And I think I can speak for everyone and say that when communities get involved with the broadband project, it becomes a many months long or multiple year long need or opportunity for education and outreach. And the groups address that via social media, via Facebook, and kind of one-on-one during that time. And another thing that be interested to hear from others on is that I think in Troy, the broadband committee was very much focused on improving infrastructure, but doesn't have any, appetite or interest in tackling other broadband related issues. So it's unclear kind of what they would work on next. And be interested to hear if other towns, even going back to folks from Jaffrey and Chesterfield, if there are, what's next for you if there's another broadband related goal. So that's what's happening in Troy.
What none of us have mentioned yet, this is Rebecca again, is once we get the fiber to the home project done, which Dublin is very happy to have, we need to start talking more about cell service, which I think is on your agenda today. But I don't really know that anybody has a really great single solution to solve that problem. And hopefully we can start steering in that direction.
Thanks for the comment, Rebecca. Great, good point. Would anyone else like to provide a report out on a recently kind of completed project, something under construction right now? Okay, great. Well, we can come back to it. And the third group I'd love to hear updates from are communities that are, preparing, for construction. Maybe it's this year, or maybe it's just some months away. And communities that are, have been focused on what new opportunities will come from NTIA from the state. What are you up to right now? Where are you looking for support? And at that point, maybe we can all kind of chime in with some responses. We'd like to go first.
Well, I can go first. I'm Richard Smeeth from New Ipswich. We've been participating in the broadband conversations for about a year now, and they're very informative, and thank you very much for hosting these. What I would say is that for New Ipswich, we've just had a change in leadership. We've got a new town administrator. Her name is Debbie Deaton, and she is trying to help push the broadband issue. We've done a pair of RFIs last year, got feedback. We sent out another one to consolidate it, and we're waiting for feedback on basically trying to better determine where our weaknesses are, which we strongly believe is in the outlying areas. It seems like most of the community is satisfied with what they have currently, what they're currently using. And that has created a certain lack of interest, which is disheartening. So broadband really only comes up when myself or somebody else on the planning board addresses it, and it doesn't seem to go forward. One of the things I did, I was trying to do broadband with one or two people, is a subcommittee under the planning board, but I sit on that, and I've asked our chairperson to incorporate broadband under planning. One of the things that we're doing is we're reviewing our bylaws, and I want to get the broadband issues brought into the bylaws. So we're kind of like a bobber out on a bobbin, I guess, out on a small lake. We're there bobbing up and down, and we're waiting for something to bite. And the last thing I would say is this community is very much adverse to spending any money. And I think that is the driving issue here. They don't want to go in for a bond, from what I can tell, and go and support a bond for broadband infrastructure. As a case in point, and real quickly, they've been trying to come up with a consolidated safety complex, and working on that now for about 5 years, and still haven't gotten anywhere. And that seems to be the primary issue with the selectmen on getting that taken care of. Broadband, because of that lack of initiative, seems to be a second or third seat. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for the great summary. And did anyone have some reactions to Richard's issues specifically? You want to chime in?
Sorry, this is Molly Miller in Hancock. Hi, Richard. Yeah, we're somewhere in between, I would say, sorry, 2 and 3. Same with Hancock is a little bit what Alfie's saying. I feel like, from doing this, it's like what you learn is the name of the game is your unserved percentage. So the towns that were able to successfully do these public-private partnerships earlier on had a much higher percentage of unserved, meaning it was more, it was much better for the service providers to get in there and work with them. Hancock has about somewhere between 28, about 30% unserved, which means we have a little bit of your problem, Richard. There's 70% of people in town who are like, this is fine. And the 30% are not. Our select board is motivated. One issue we have is it's hard to get a service provider interested when you have not a 90 or 80 or 75% unserved, because your service fee would be untenably high if you did a bond, which we're interested in doing. Hancock has both an opportunity and a challenge in that CCI was awarded through a reverse auction about half of town in RDOF money, which that means that within 7 years, they'll build it out. But what we don't want to do is end up with a scenario where half the town has a service fee, half the town doesn't. That would be not good for CCI and not good for the town. So we are really actively pursuing government money. One thing, you know, but which is a waiting game. We're just waiting. The state, I would say, has been way slower than we thought in terms of when like that RDOF money from last year is going to be, the rules are going to be released, when you can actually apply. We did apply for an NTIA grant last year, which we didn't get. I would say in terms of your committee, we had a similar issue where there was a broadband committee a couple of years ago. I would say, Richard, fill your committee with people who are unserved. Our old broadband committee was almost all people who had access to cable, and they were, you know, super nice people and motivated, but not that motivated. When I came on board, now our committee is 90% people who live, you know, in the rural outskirts area, and they will be much more motivated. That's how you're going to get it done. You need a really strong committee of people who are highly motivated for the town, but personally for themselves, because they really get what it means to not have, you know, adequate access. One thing that would be super useful for us from other people is in terms of this education piece. We've been writing, you know, we have a website, we've been writing stuff in the Hancock paper, but we've been using numbers like this is what unserved means. You have 25.3. Numbers don't really matter to people. What we're trying to do is figure out some good examples of what does 25.3 mean for use? Like what can't you do? What can you do? Same with cable, same with fiber. Like how is your life going to change? Not what are these numbers? Because the numbers just seemed, and we don't have, I mean, we sort of have examples, but we don't have anything that great. So anybody who's got anything they've used to educate the town in a more narrative oriented way, or what's this going to mean to you? How is your life in the morning when you wake up and have coffee? How is it going to change from the get-go? That would be super, super useful.
Thank you, Molly.
Well, it's 11 o'clock.
Sorry.
Thank you for the updates and comments, Molly. I think one reaction I had initially is that we have a pretty big pool of communities and individuals that have had their lives, you know, already improved by some of these projects. It could be a way to maybe make some of our own materials and content. You know, a brief testimonial and a photo. Anyway, it's something to consider.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a comment on some of the benefits. I mean, prior to getting the fiber put in, I had DirecTV, I had phone service from the phone company, and I had my broadband that I had to get wherever I could get it from. Since getting fiber, I was able to drop DirecTV, do all streaming services, use a VoIP for my phone, and basically my monthly costs are half what they were before. So on a monthly basis, I'm saving over 120 bucks a month just because I'm now using something that's modern, and because of that, I can also use other services now and get rid of other high cost items. So there's a big money saving there if you go that route. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize when you start adding things up. You talk about a cable service. A cable service is usually about 160 bucks a month or so, 125 bucks a month. You know, with the streaming services, once you get the fiber in and everything, it's a huge money savings. Also, phone service. If you use phone service through Consolidated, it's basically 45 bucks a month. You use a VoIP service that you can get online, and it's basically costing me about 10 bucks a month. So that's a huge savings there. So there are savings out there once you have the technology in there that a lot of people don't realize. And one other aspect is in our town, we are only about 18% underserved, but the primary server in our town was a company who had huge reliability issues. The internet was going up and down 3 and 4 times a day. So for us, even though they had high-speed connections, the reliability was such an issue that going to fiber made the sell so much easier for us.
Thanks, thanks. That's super helpful, Brad. I really appreciate it. The other thing I forgot to mention that I was going to say is we've been working with CCI, anticipating hopefully doing this, getting some of this government money. And they had suggested doing getting a survey or a thing done by a outside consultants, and our select board was to determine, we had determined, what our unserved was, but they really wanted like an address by address for every single person in town in terms of writing grants. Our select board was really resistant. It was like $13,000, and like miraculously we convinced them to use some of that ARPA money that each town had. And I will say that seems to, I'm back to you, Richard, like it is really important to figure out not just what's your percentage of unserved, but really literally every single address, who has what, who's in our case, pending on RDOF, who has cable, who has, no access or very little, just access to, internet through phone. So that is useful, and I agree with everybody saying work with the incumbent.
Yeah, your RFI should give you all that information. Just to give you a point of reference, our town, the amount of money we spent going through this whole process was about $1,000, and that was only for the legal costs of the lawyers to look over the final contract. We had no other costs because, and this is again with some of the grants and stuff, you're required to go through more hoops. If you just work with the incumbent, it becomes a whole lot cheaper.
Thanks everyone for the dialogue on that. Let's go to John from Swansea and then Natalie from Winchester. Thanks for your patience, John.
Yeah, how do I know if I'm there? Oh, there we go.
Yep, you're live.
As far as, you folks trying to get information from the uneducated folks, of what the advantages of broadbands are. Like Henry knows, I'm a computer geek, computer programmer kind of guy. I've been very involved with my town in Swansea, but I can't say much for Swansea, Henry, only because I tried to get involved with the committee in the town, and they just, gave me a very sour taste that I come from no money, so I'm not important. But I still have good positive feedback that I can give. The number one thing that I try to tell everybody is, look, fiber is as fast as the speed of light. If you're tired of looking at your computer and you're watching the spinning wheels spin around and you're waiting for your processor to process and all of these things, just like the one gentleman was talking about the financial part of it. I'm out here in Swansea, and I think there's some parts of Swansea that's under construction. I mean, I see it every day, but this, the way the construction has been taking place is kind of weird. You can go over to Cobble Hill Road, which is a Class 6 road, dead end road. One of my friends lives up there, and he's got the fiber at his house already. But I'm out here on a main highway, still waiting, not hearing a single word of when I'm going to get it. I'm doing this on 3 megabyte. Now, if I can do this on 3 megabyte, just imagine what you could do with the speed of light. So I mean, that's a good thing that you can educate your residents in your town if you're having trouble getting the message out there. There's really nothing faster than the speed of light. And, as far as reducing your monthly cost, that's going to be huge. I'm spending like $300, maybe almost $400 a month out here trying to survive with TV and telephone and direct TV and all that stuff. I mean, I'm spending a good chunk of change. I've approached CCI for 7 years, and you know, I'm seem to coming, you know, like I don't want to put negative input into your meeting, but I want to let you know where I'm at as a resident here in Swansea. Hopefully that has got some positive input for you guys.
Thanks, John. I think it was. And this is, I mean, this meeting's about like real and practical, you know, scenarios. Swansea is a town that like maybe like New Ipswich, for example, like Hancock and some others has, you know, overall a lot of service compared to some other places. And another I thought really positive thing you brought up was the idea of having some local voices in promoting broadband improvement. You know, the like literally, you know, voices from your community are very valuable, you know, to your residents. Let's go to Natalie from Winchester. Thanks for waiting.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. And I apologize if I break up because I am driving, but we did have recently some success in passing our warrant article for bonding. Like other towns, our town doesn't want to spend much money on a lot of things, but what we did focus on to get it passed, and it actually passed by an overwhelming amount for town voting, is we focused primarily on the effect on taxation and the public benefit. And specifically the reduction in taxation because of the increase in town value after the town is reassessed in 5 years. And then also the public benefit. We focused on COVID and remote learning. We focused on local democracy and keeping people informed with their town and their town meetings. And that seemed to resonate a lot with people. But addressing the specific money, our bond would have been, I believe it was like 2.9 million, but we actually only have to bond for 660,000 because we worked with CCI to reduce that through the RDOF funds. So that initial work and the work of the broadband committee and the town seeing that we were actively trying not to overwhelm them with a heavy bond really helped push it through. So definitely working closely with CCI and then continuing to look for grants before bonding actually takes place. But that's just some successes that we had. A lot of social media. I think like Brad said, we spent about $1,400, $1,000 of it on the attorney and $400 on 2 town mailings that were sent out that were extremely informative to people, and it actually got them excited for that to pass. So that's a little bit about Winchester.
Thanks, Natalie. You packed a lot in there, and I will update our map, you know, to show the 2022 round. I think you're one of, maybe not the only, but one of them, just a small number of towns that passed broadband infrastructure bonds this year. Congratulations. And if you think of it, when you're out of your car, would love to see the mailing that you mentioned. If you'd be willing to share that, you know, we could post it as a resource for others to consider.
Definitely. I can also share the PowerPoints that we used during our public hearings.
Thank you. Let's see, Tara, you have your hand up. Thanks for waiting.
Hi, Henry. Thanks for inviting me. This is my first time coming to this meeting. And probably because being in Greenville, we had substantial cable-based coverage, but this issue of last mile has come up recently when Greenville received its first ARPA municipal allocation, and we had our public hearing. Broadband was one of the things that got brought up as a possibility, and it's one that the selectmen did kind of grasp onto because where a lot of our infrastructure needs here in town, because we have municipal water and sewer, a lot of the initial thought process is to put any money that's received towards that, but there are areas of town, more remote areas that don't benefit from those services. And this, outskirts as far as broadband is maybe a way to kind of spread the benefit of those unanticipated funds around. I knew that we were in pretty good shape. It was very interesting to reach out to our cable provider and find out when I asked them to give me kind of a map of where their service doesn't extend to. It was very small amounts of the outskirts of town. Kind of surprising in how little mileage was not currently serviced, and counting up the developed parcels that are in those areas, less than probably 20 residences and businesses. It was interesting to find that one of our in-town roads, which houses a couple of businesses and our DPW, does not currently have service. So it is something that we are just starting to explore. And I, as I've been sitting here listening to everybody, I picked up on a couple things that brought me, or gave me some questions to ask, which is for those communities that have been working with an incumbent, was there a density number that you pushed against that incumbent provider to say, well, if the density exists, at a certain level, that they would be expected to do that without necessarily needing any public funds to support that? And then the other question that came up, somebody mentioned the concept of long driveways, and I think I actually have a couple of my, less than 20 identified parcels that may be, they're at the end of the line, and that maybe that's the real reason why they don't have service. And then the, service just didn't continue on beyond their properties. And of course, when you start talking about only 15 or 20 properties getting services, you have to start worrying about the potential of favoritism, or we happen to have a very tight community where some of the involved people are people that are in positions of power, or permanent families in town. So that's definitely going to be one of the potential perception issues that I have to deal with if we're going to allocate any public funds for this. So any feedback that some of the other communities have would be greatly appreciated.
Thanks for joining at short notice, Tara, today. Tara is town administrator in Greenville. And if we do have a couple minutes on this agenda item, if people would like to respond to some of her questions and comments.
This is Rebecca again. I'm kind of surprised to hear some of these concerns, and I understand from there's Keene and there's Dublin, right? So in Keene, we had people who were saying, why are we still unserved? Everybody else in Keene has service. Why are we the ones who don't? And it did come down to density. That was the issue in those particular neighborhoods. And we were able to work with 2 providers over, it took some patience and a couple of years, but now they have 2 options. In Dublin, we didn't have the concern whatsoever of who will get it and who won't, because it was required that it be provided across all addresses. So Consolidated said there isn't a single address in Dublin that we won't serve. So I would hope that would be the case in every community. It did take, we weren't a committee of the planning board, or subcommittee. We were a broadband committee. We were 6 or 7 people that met for 2 years and did a lot of education. And we actually had Consolidated come in and provide those public meetings, those public hearings where they did all of the educating and answered all of those questions. What if they get it and I don't? How's it going to affect taxes? And why should we do this now if it's just going to happen later? And they answered all those questions beautifully. So I really encourage, I don't know, maybe there are some of y'all who have tried to work with Consolidated or have done the RFI process and it's not working for you. But I've got a gig connection at my house in Dublin right now, and I'm paying $70 a month. And 10 of that is going to pay back the bond, so it doesn't affect the taxpayers who don't want to take advantage of the service.
Thanks, Rebecca, for the comments. Alfie, do you have a comment? And if you
Yeah,
go ahead.
this is Alfie Eisenberg from Francistown. I just wanted to in the chat about our situation. Since some of the other people were talking about how RDOF funds help the percentage served, and everything is small islands of unserved, you know, at the far reaches of town. And you know, we have been working with CCI, well, at least talking to them for a couple of years now. And, you know, we just can't seem to get on their radar for doing anything soon because they need, you know, we would need, you know, most of the funding. You know, we have high taxes, and even if we were trying to get bond through, you know, 86% of the town is already served. So it's going to be hard to get any tax money for that. So, you know, without one of these new grants coming in, with the federal money coming in, there's really no option for us yet. We did apply, as Molly said, through NTIA, along with Hancock, and obviously didn't reward any money to New Hampshire at all for that. So things are getting worse for us instead of better at the moment. And that's about it.
Thank you for the update, Alfie. And I was curious, and I think it's worth addressing specifically that the NTI, one of the NTIA stimulus broadband programs, there was an application from our region. You're just saying it wasn't, New Hampshire didn't receive any awards from the North Country or from the Hancock Francistown submittal. Did Hancock or Francistown receive feedback about the application that would be useful to share?
We haven't received any feedback directly. I don't know if we had to go actually solicit feedback, or if you have any information on how to get that, that would help, I guess.
Just curious. Okay, I do want to kind of close up this this discussion. This is, I think, a good intro for some newer people, and a good combination update that we don't typically get to do in our meetings. Before, and we'll have time for general updates later as well. But before we leave this, just say two things. One is, if you heard something from a speaker or presenter that you want to follow up with them on, go over to the participants list, double click their name, and say hello, and ask for their contact information, so you can follow up in more detail. Likewise, if you're interested in talking about a place where your community would like additional support, the Planning Commission may also be a resource. And I'd ask you to send a note in the chat to myself or Tim Murphy in the chat to start a discussion about what services we could offer. Great. Thanks everyone for your comments and discussion on that item. So the next item on the agenda is about a broadband related project that really we haven't talked about too much. It focuses on digital literacy, as well as access to broadband. And I think for the most part, this group has really focused primarily on access, as in the connection to your home. But of course, there are these other dimensions to the internet and broadband, not just a connection to your home, but a device to use that connection, as well as the skills and abilities to kind of navigate, the resources that are available online. And I'll provide just a 5 or 10 minute overview of a project that we're actively working on now and will complete this summer. And it's called the Digital Literacy and Access Needs Assessment. and it's being sponsored by support from the Monadnock United Way to address impacts of the pandemic. I'm actually going to reuse some slides that I delivered last week to the group, kind of guiding us throughout the project, known as the Monadnock Social Services Collaborative. And they include representation from organizations like Keene Housing, Southwestern Community Services, Community Volunteer Transportation Company, Cheshire Medical Center, folks like that that have interest in understanding and addressing the needs of older adults, in particular, related to digital literacy. But as a companion to that, they want to understand and get involved with community-wide, efforts to, first of all, have that connection available. So I'll just break down some of what we're doing here, and maybe start off with defining digital literacy, because we haven't talked about this before, and maybe I won't put Carol Miller on the spot, but the New Hampshire Collaborative for Digital Equity, this is very much in their court. We've had some exposure to this through osmosis from some of her work, including a statewide survey, but this is a more specific effort focused on digital literacy. And there are a couple definitions available that I wanted to share to start. One from the NTIA, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, and they define it as part of what they call digital inclusion. And it includes access, so having a connection, being able to subscribe, as well as devices, and then finally the skills to utilize that, to whether it's supporting their quality of life, collaboration, etc. So these are broad definitions, and but these were the 4 components of digital equity. Again, literacy is among access, use, and then maybe the 4th one that I didn't mention, using broadband resources to improve community planning, economic development, etc. A second way to talk about digital literacy, I found from the American Library Association, and they define digital literacy as the ability to use information and communication technologies to find, evaluate, create, and communicate information, requiring both cognitive and technical skills. So a couple big picture definitions going into this new topic. I mentioned that we're actively engaged with this project. We're working to actually complete it over the summer. So it's a pretty rapid timeline, but we're really have 5 key components to it. The first one will be identifying best practices to improve digital literacy, especially in areas where older adults are the target population. We are developing 2 kind of questionnaires or surveys that one will be targeted at the organizations that are part of this social services collaborative, again, generally focused on older adult population, as well as a survey tool or interview tool for the members, clients of those organizations. And the intent of those surveys is kind of, it varies, but we're trying to establish a baseline of both individual and for social service organizations, what is our kind of level of digital literacy? Where are our needs for increasing those skills with a new training option, etc. The group has also asked for information about kind of broadband access throughout the region, which of course is kind of what we talk about in many of our meetings. That's not something they're as plugged into as all of you, and they value having information so they know, in X community, their client, their customer may have broadband access issues, things like that. And we'll be providing this via a report later this summer. Carol Miller, I saw your hand go up, and I'll just pause here if you want to chime in about digital literacy.
Thank you, Henry. I'm so glad to see that the Southwestern region is doing some work and undertaking this project. The work that the National Collaborative for Digital Equity based in New Hampshire has been doing is addressing poverty really in low and middle income residents of the state by bringing them up to date on what discounts are available through the American Connect program, how they can get devices for little or nothing along with grants. So this information here is very good, because we all know that if nobody understands or portions of our populations don't understand why they need broadband, this particular project will help to uncover what needs to be done in the future. So really kudos going out to you, Henry, and Southwestern Regional Planning Commission, Tim Murphy. It's really the next step after the connection, and it's so important. So I will leave it at that for the sake of being brief. I am currently working in the state. I have several projects with towns preparing town leadership for broadband, what we're calling broadband readiness, which is doing all of this and surveying that low and middle income population, and providing them some support through DHHS. We have a large grant to do. We're doing work there. We're doing some individual town mapping as well. And again, if there's anything we can collaborate on, once you get through this project, I think we should sit down and really have a talk about what some of the projects that we're already doing in the state and how you can bring them to the Southwestern region. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak, and so nice to see folks. I'm retired, but not out of the game. So nice to see everybody.
Thanks for joining, Carol, for putting you on the spot. Definitely interested in following up with you offline and bringing some of the information about the work you're doing, as well as the results from this project, to a future agenda. Great. So I mentioned this is, we're actively working on this. We have some draft questionnaires that we're seeking input on from the social service agencies. Carol mentioned addressing poverty as a key goal to this work. And this one focus of this collaborative is addressing health outcomes. So this community, again, hasn't been plugged into broadband conversations that we've had, but they've seen through the pandemic the negative health consequences of not having connectivity, and they put forth this proposal to the Monadnock United Way to begin to address that. So really great to see that moving forward. And I'm working on this project with someone you may or may not have worked with before, Terry Johnson, who's a senior project manager here. So that is my very brief update on that work that's going on. Looking forward to featuring results on a future agenda. Very much related to digital literacy, and actually something Carol brought up is the Affordable Connectivity Program. This is one of the tools we should have in our toolbox at kind of bridging the divide about access, not just having the ability to connect, but also the affordability aspect that's been brought up a couple times. This is something that is going to be, this program is something that's going to be sustained, for the near future. And there's some great tools out there that can be deployed at the community level. So wanted to just quickly notify you of that, encourage you to visit the website or Google it, try to talk more about this on a future agenda. Okay, great. So switching gears kind of to more of our traditional updates. I don't have detailed remarks about the state legislative session, but I will go through some brief updates for each of the 4 bills that we talked about at the last meeting, give you a sense of where things stand now. And I'll invite really anyone who's participated in those meetings, hearings, or has updates to add those as I go through them. Okay. Oh, and by the way, these items are also available at SWRPC's Broadband website, all the same links and updates if you want to view them there. So this session, there was proposed legislation to expand the use of broadband infrastructure bonds to any location within a community, not just those being defined as unserved. This did not get traction this session. Well, that's my understanding, is when something's referred to interim study, is essentially that this is where it stops moving in this legislative session. That's the brief update there. But I welcome any questions or comments on this before I move on. Okay.
Henry, this is Carol Monroe. Sorry, I was having
Thanks,
a hard
Carol.
time taking myself off of mute. I did speak with Denise Ricciardi, who sponsored this. She was under a lot of pressure from Bedford, the town of Bedford, to put this bill through. And my take on it is, it would be great if every municipality could use their bonding power to do whatever they need to do, and they can justify for their community without having to prove served or unserved areas for broadband. However, our language in our RSAs is very explicit about the 25.3 minimum level as being served. And we've worked off of that for many purposes, including what they'll be working for some of this grant allocation coming to the state. And so I don't think that these federal grants federal funding should be used to overbuild cabled areas, which is what Bedford wants to do because they don't like Comcast service, and take away from the funding that's available to build out those unserved areas in the state. And so I think that is where many on the committee came down about this legislation. The intent of it was just to remove that restriction to being able to bond for anything you'd like instead of just the unserved areas. And I agree with that not to proceed decision on this particular bill, because I think it would harm the other areas of the state that don't have the opportunity to have broadband at all. Forget about whether it's a competitive environment. So.
Thanks for the comment, Carol. And just to clarify, you mentioned some of the upcoming state broadband programs, and did I hear you right in saying you felt it would not be desirable to use those funds to overbuild?
No, yes, I don't think we should be using the federal funds allocated for unserved areas and encouraging universal access for the purpose of overbuilding a Comcast. I'm not talking about overbuilding to get from A to B. I'm talking about completely overbuilding a Comcast or even a CCI area if it's a fiber to the premise area, for the sake of encouraging competition. I do think it would be great if everybody had multiple choices in their town to choose from in terms of big broadband, fiber to the premise, or a cable option, or something along those lines, but we're not there yet. And we need to make sure that the unserved and underserved areas of the state are served first before any funding goes to overbuild significant areas that are already receiving service.
Thanks for clarifying that, Carol. Okay, so that is the update on that bill. Perhaps we'll see it again in some other variation in a future session, but not this session. So the next item deals with broadband infrastructure bonds again, and I believe this is more of a minor change that would allow that to happen outside of a typical town meeting. So there was this was heard by a couple of committees, and the latest committee, the Municipal and County Government Committee, will make a decision about that bill next week. The third bill we looked at last time was relative to the state's plans to offer support for broadband projects. This proposal from Senator Khan and others would allow cell coverage to be added as an eligible category of projects. And I don't see Senator Khan in here today, but this is still active in the legislative session, and it was referred to a second committee, Science, Technology, and Energy. Will vote on this next week. And I believe there was a write-up about this actually in, I think, yesterday's Keene Sentinel, if anyone noticed that. I haven't looked at it yet.
Okay.
And thank you for folks contributing to the chat, and for Tim for fielding some of those responses. All right, the last bill deals with appropriating money from the ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, to the state for use in the state's broadband program. I don't have more information other than this is still moving. I did see a note from Carol Miller about kind of buckets of funding. Carol, do you have some update you could share about this bill?
I do. I talk to the broadband office every couple of weeks, simply because, you know, they have money. As long as I was a director at BEA of broadband, I never had any money. So it's something new for the state of New Hampshire. So I would first of all ask and for patience for a couple of reasons. One are, you know, Vermont and Maine have had established grant programs and, you know, a source of funding for several years. New Hampshire has never had a fund, really. And so it takes a while to get the process through the legislature, who is very hands-on with this funding. I know that this bill it was amended, but it increased the matching fund to about 65 million from my last conversation with the guys at the office. So that'll be a big a big help for those communities that need to find matching funds for additional programs, whether it be bonding, whether it be, NTIA, USDA, NBRC, any of the grant opportunities. I will let you know that NBRC this year is probably a no-go for broadband funding, simply because there's so much broadband funding coming into the state. So those projects will not be funded. So if you're thinking of doing a northern border, don't bother. Save you the time and the energy. Letter of interest is due April 22nd. So if you had a project, solar, whatever else, you certainly could apply for there, but I would caution you to even try to do a broadband project with Northern Border Regional Commission grant. But the other thing I would say is there's going to be a large swath of money, although this unserved language is throwing a monkey wrench into everything. The New Hampshire Broadband Office will award better scoring for those projects that go well above the 25/3 benchmark that is currently the FCC definition of broadband. So those projects will be looked at in a better light. But whether that's going to do fiber to the premise in a community that is partially served or 3/4 served, probably not going to happen. Those communities that are terribly underserved would probably have a shot with the funding. But regardless of the funding, who applies for it, whether it's a provider, the municipality, the municipality is always going to have a word to say on who gets funded in their community. So there's a power to be had through the providers are being told you need to work with the communities, the towns and cities across the state who need service. Otherwise, don't come in and ask for funding and not have worked with a municipality on it. So the time has never been better for partnering and opportunity statewide with regards to funding. So with that, like I say, if people have questions or issues regarding this funding coming into the state, everything is morphing. There is a lot of people, a lot of legislators want to have control of this money, and that's a lot of oversight. So that slows everything down. So hopefully by June, July, some money will, maybe even September, some money will actually get out the door, but just be patient about it and understand that we're coming from a place where there has never been a program with regards to broadband other than advocacy that I did for 11 years. So just be patient.
Thank you for the update, Carol. Tim, do you want to say a few words?
Well, thank you, Henry, and hello, everyone. Tim Murphy with SWRPC. And Carol, I always appreciate your contributions and respect your being connected and so forth. I guess my question to what you just described about Northern Border Regional Commission, have you heard definitively that the upcoming round of the NBRC SEID application will not support broadband projects?
Oh, now you're really putting me on the spot.
Well, and that's why I'm bringing it up, because I heard you say that rather definitively. And although I think what you're describing makes sense, we serve as the local development district here at SWRPC for Cheshire County entities. And I just don't want to shut the door on someone who might be thinking of NBRC. Henry, you attended an information session, I think it was last Friday. Did you hear something definitive on this front?
Yes, I did. And so broadband is still an eligible activity as far as the grant's concerned. They did say they were aware there were lots of other dedicated broadband funding. NBRC is maybe not the best choice because of the competition from other projects,
Sure.
but it still is a choice.
Yeah, and that's why I'm intervening here. I just feel obligated as the LDD to not close that door. It wouldn't be a really heavy lift in filing the letter of interest, which is going to be due soon, and then maybe find out feedback from NBRC staff whether or not they would suggest coming forward with a full application, which would be a much heavier lift. So I think it's a great point, Carol. It makes sense that I could see why they would see it that way, but
Yeah, they're never going to come out and say that. I can tell you that they won't, politically speaking. You know, it's a political entity, but just heed my words.
okay.
But yeah, I'd be very surprised if a broadband project was funded. And I don't try to discourage folks from, you know, a letter of interest on the 22nd. But you know, don't put all your eggs in one basket, really. Yeah.
That's always good advice.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Henry.
Yeah, thank you both. And just for everyone's benefit, NBRC is an opportunity for communities in Cheshire County. Something notable for this cycle is that they're continuing the ability to have a match waiver granted. Typically, the match for a project is 50% non-federal, but there still is a COVID-related provision to request a waiver of some or all of that. So just something to keep in mind. And, you know, I'm just thinking, I did pick this meeting date because Mark LaLiberty and Matt Conserva from BEA could attend, but I think what happened is they themselves may needed to attend or participate in the hearing for this particular bill subsequent to the poll. So I'll connect with their staff and share some other update on what their activities are at a later date. Great. So we're getting close to the finish line. Thank you to everyone who's kind of stuck with us attendance-wise for a longer meeting. I'd just like to open this up to the floor to other updates folks would like to share on what they're working on. Maybe in particular, folks who didn't feel the other agenda items were in their wheelhouse. This is a chance to let us know what you're up to. Is there someone who'd like to go first?
Henry, I'm wondering if the roundtable was enough of an open forum so people could pretty much share what they're up to. So that might be why we're hearing crickets at the moment. But it's a great opportunity for anyone to jump in before we wrap up.
Tim, Henry, this is Bobby Graham from Senator Hassan's office. Apologize. I don't know if you went over ledge updates at the beginning of this call. I did miss just the top end of this, but I would just add that you know, as folks are applying to any of these federal funds, you know, keep the delegation offices in mind. We've written some letters of support for some broadband applications already this year, and if there are any of others that are floating out there, please connect with our office so that we would be able to provide that letter of support for you. You know, we're not in the business of choosing winners and losers among our own constituents, and so we definitely support each and every one of you as you pursue these funds. So feel free to get in touch there.
Thank you, Bobby, for the update. And we actually kind of skipped over federal updates to make room on this agenda. We just heard the state updates. I know there is a deadline coming up, I believe, Friday for congressionally delegated spending. Do you have any comments or suggestions about people considering broadband projects for congressionally designated spending?
So unfortunately, I won't be able to help out too much with that, just because my boss, due to her role on the Government Oversight Spending Committee, she has decided not to partake in that. And so each one of these projects, though, is going to go, you know, if you're applying through Senator Shaheen's office or Congresswoman Custer's, I don't know if we have anyone on this call who might actually be Congressman Pappas's office, but that process is also available there. And so those projects will then go to, if it's on the House committee, and on the Senate committee. So the senator will be aware of those projects and looking at them as they pass through the Senate Government Spending Oversight Committee. So if you are applying to either Senator Shaheen's office or Congresswoman Custer's office, we would ask that you just make us aware of that, because of the processes that go down in DC, and the senator will absolutely, be aware of it as it goes through committee. So I don't have much for you there, unfortunately. But one other update, if anyone is interested, the senator will actually be in Keene this upcoming Monday for a workforce development discussion. So.
Thank you for those updates, Bobby. Let's see, is there anyone else who'd like to provide an update? Jeff, not to put you on the spot, but I saw you unmute. Did you want to fit something in? May have lost Jeff. Okay, Jeff had to run it maybe. Are there any other updates attendees would like to share?
Henry, mine's not an update, but Bobby, you just mentioned a session on Monday on workforce development. Is that something you could maybe forward me some additional detail on?
I sure can.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you could share that with the group, that'd be great.
Is that something you could place in the chat now? Otherwise, if you send it to Henry and I, we can distribute it to today's attendees.
I don't have the information for this at the moment, unfortunately. This is actually something that is being handled by, it looks like the Keene and Peterborough Chamber in concert with the college. And so I will connect with them to see about getting that invite out to these folks. This is kind of something that our office has been piggybacking onto an event that's already happening in Keene. So unfortunately, I don't really have access to those mechanisms.
Well, we can track down our friends at the chamber and get the info. So that's enough info for us. Thank you.
Yeah, that
Okay.
made me chuckle a little bit. I'm on the board at the chamber, so I'll definitely be calling Luca. Thank you.
Of course.
I had a similar reaction, Rebecca.
Okay, we'll keep an eye out for that. I'll just note that I posted a link in the chat. Please give that a click. There's a very short 3 or 4 question survey about today's session. It's anonymous, and we appreciate your feedback on today's meeting. And we still have a couple minutes. Molly, did you have something else to share?
No, I had a question for Bobby. I just wanted clarity. You're saying, I think I got this right, but I want to be sure that Maggie Hassan is not taking broadband related CDSs, but that Shaheen and Custer are. Did I get that right?
That's correct. And my boss, Senator Hassan, is not taking any CDSs. And so it's not a factor of, is this broadband eligible or not? It's just, are we taking any of them or not?
Thanks for clarifying that. And if people do want some basic info on that, you could contact me outside of this meeting. I also know that the New Hampshire Municipal Association has produced some materials and recorded some information sessions about congressionally designated spending. But this is the 11th hour. I know it. I believe it is due Friday. So be aware of that. Great. Well, thanks everyone for sticking on. Please click that SurveyMonkey link to give us some feedback about today's meeting. And we hope to see you at the next Monadnock Broadband Group meeting. Thank you.